top 10 left fielders of 2024, comparing the way these guys actually played to the preseason top 10 list that we made coming into the year. And first off, we got to look by the guys that I projected would be in the top 10 who ended up not making the top 10. And I'm just going to say it now. Every single year, left field is by far the worst position that I project every single year. And I'm going to start referring to this as the Joey Gallo curse at this point, honestly. But anyway, let's get started here by looking at the guys that failed to make this list. And that's going to start out with Nolan Jones, who was our preseason number 3, don't ask. And then Chas McCormick, who was our preseason number 6. I compared 22 left fielders when I made this list, and these guys came in at 21 and 22. And I wouldn't have even bothered to look at these guys and the numbers they had if I didn't need to because of my preseason ranks. But let's talk about the seasons that these two had. They both were injured and missed some major time. They were major disasters even when they were on the field. Nolan Jones has such great abilities and physical talents, but he just could not put it to use this year. He was terrible at the plate, he was terrible on the base path, and he was terrible in the field. Chas was kind of the same deal, although he doesn't have the physical attributes that Nolan Jones does. He was hyped up coming out of his 2023 season, which was pretty successful, but he was also a disaster at the plate for the short time that he was in the field. But then, at the number 16 spot, we had Randy Arozarena, my preseason number 1. Just so hot and cold. It's really impossible to project him because he can be an MVP level player, but he just doesn't do it for very long because he'll do it for like a postseason stretch or he'll do it for the first quarter of a season and then he'll just completely disappear. And this year he was really, when you look at the year as a whole, a liability on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively, even though he did have some hot stretches. Then moving on, we're going to have to look at the number 15 spot, Lars Nootbaar, who was our preseason number 4. He also missed some pretty major time. He played decently well when he was on the field, but just not on the field enough and not playing at a high enough level to actually make the top 10. And then at the number 14 spot, we had Bryan Reynolds, our preseason number 8. And he really continues to teeter on that line of just a solid player to a star level player. I like what he did at the plate this year, as he was mildly above average, played a good amount of time, but just really struggled defensively. All right, so that's out of the way. Now let's get to the actual top 10 for the 2024 season. We're going to start out with the number 10 spot, Wyatt Langford, who was our preseason number 9. He had a good but somewhat underwhelming rookie year. I think we did expect a little bit more from him. He's stacked with good abilities and really struggled at the start of the year. Missed some time with an injury, but heated up as the year went on. But even with the injuries and the slow start, he still had really good defense. He still had some really good offensive contributions with an above average WRC plus and bases created plus. He was really great on the base path, really good defender, and overall just a very solid player. And obviously we will look for him to continue to improve moving forward. But then at the number 9 spot, we had Spencer Steer, not in our preseason top 10. Does a great job of getting on base and stealing bases. Comparing him to all the other left fielders that I've talked about so far in this video, he blows them out of the water when it comes to the run production side of the game. Then at the number 8 spot, we have Ian Happ, our preseason number 10. He continues to be really what I would consider one of the most dependable left fielders in the game of baseball. He also is with Reynolds in that borderline of all-star to like really good level player. But it's just nice to know that you can depend on the guy that you're putting out there, and he did play at a higher level than Bryan Reynolds this year. But then moving on to the number 7 spot, we have Jackson Chourio, not in our preseason top 10. Number 1, we thought he was going to be a right fielder, and then number 2, because we really weren't sure how he was going to look out of the gate, but he looked really good, and he also kind of like Langford, continued to look better as the year went on. And I think we knew he was going to be great on the base path and defensively, but the offensive value was what we were going to be a little bit concerned about. But he had a very solid impact for the Brewers at the plate in 2024. Then at the number 6 spot, our preseason number 7, Teoscar Hernandez. Great year for the world champion Dodgers. I believe Teoscar was more foundational to their success than some might realize. Obviously, the defense and base running is not great for him. But man, what he does with the bat really makes up for it. Usually he can tend to be very hot and cold. He can be a guy who will strike out 4 times a day, every day for a week, and then he will just go on an absolute tear and be one of the best hitters in baseball. But in 2024, we saw a whole lot more of the hot stretches than we did the cold stretches. And that's what got him this high on our list. But then at the number 5 spot, we have Christian Yelich, who was our preseason number 2. And I know, obviously, he missed a lot of time. And it looks like Chourio will take over the left field spot moving forward for the Brewers. But Yelich did play left field more than any other position in 2024, and he lit it up when he did play. I mean, he was sneakily in the MVP conversation. I mean, that's how well he was playing before he got hurt, and I don't think a lot of people really remember that. I mean, he was by far the best hitting left fielder we had at that point in the year, and he was also really good on the base path when he was on the field. Unfortunately, the missed time does hurt the overall value, and that's what knocks him down the list these few spots. Then at the number 4 spot, we have Brandon Nimmo, our preseason number 9. I also think he is the third guy that fits into the category of Ian Happ and Bryan Reynolds, and obviously Nimmo played better than those guys, but these are the three and kind of the range of outcomes that I expect, where they can range from good player to really good player, but really can't reach the top MVP level elite production. But no matter what, you know you're getting a good left fielder with all three of them. In 2024, Nimmo was the best of the three, and if we compare the three to each other, Nimmo and Reynolds had an offensive run value of 25 to Ian Happ's offensive run value of 15. Nimmo had a run value of 3 on the base path, Happ had a run value of 2 on the base path, and Reynolds had a run value of 0. And then defensively, Nimmo had 3 outs above average, Ian Happ had -2 outs above average, and Reynolds had a -13 outs above average. Based on those 3 numbers alone, obviously Nimmo's going to come in a good bit higher. Then moving on to the number 3 spot, we have Steven Kwan, who, for some reason, was not in the preseason top 10. If we wanted to go back even a year before this, he was way up there on my top 10 list back in 2023. But yeah, I got really scared by the terrible 2023 season he actually had. But luckily for us, he had an amazing bounce back year in 2024. And honestly, he was in a similar situation to Yelich, where he missed some time, but when he was on the field was playing at a near MVP level. Now, maybe not what I would consider what I want for an MVP, but he was being rumored in that conversation. And honestly, he would have been getting some more attention in that discussion if it weren't for the injury that he had. But then at the number 2 spot, we have Riley Green, who was our preseason number 9 on the right field list. Because he's another guy who we didn't expect to be playing left field this year. He was a massive part of the Tigers' run into the playoffs, and really probably their biggest offensive contributor with Kerry Carpenter. And he's really just good at everything he does. Then at the number 1 spot for the left fielders of 2024, it is Jurickson Profar. Despite some absolutely atrocious defense, he was just the best hitting left fielder, and it wasn't particularly close. Obviously with the missed time by Kwan and Yelich, and then everybody else just being a tier below that. I mean, he did what Yelich did, and he just did it for an entire year. And believe it or not, was a superstar player, and was the best hitter in a star-studded Padres lineup. So that is our top 10 left fielders list for the year 2024. And we got to get through the rest of these 2024 ranks as we have the center fielders coming out next.